served in Afghanistan and Iraq in your time in the US Army. Are you satisfied that the Islamic State group has been all but eradicated in Iraq and Syria?
Well, clearly it has not been eradicated, and I think the administration has been fairly clear, though not probably clear enough, to differentiate between what they mean when they say that their physical caliphate has been defeated and then that the ISIS itself as an ideology continues to live, because military forces can go in and take territory from a force that's holding it, and they've successfully done that. But what we can't do is we can't defeat an ideology, because that's an idea of the mind, or it's a political issue, and you can't defeat a political idea with military forces. So what's appropriate is to withdraw the combat forces from an area once the combat mission is done, and then you turn to a counterterrorism mission with different philosophies and different forces to fight effectively after that.
That's a really interesting point, that the ideology cannot be undermined, cannot be destroyed via military aims. When we talk about that counter-terrorism operation that you'd like to see put in place, what does that involve?
Well, what we need is a global strategy. And there is way too much fixation, both in the United States and elsewhere, on putting troops on the ground in various foreign countries, whether it's Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, or several others. And this belief that, boy, if we take those 2,000 troops out of Syria, that there's somehow going to be an increased threat to the United States, doesn't really understand what those troops are doing there right now. And more importantly, it doesn't understand how we actually defend ourselves from terrorist strikes, no matter where they may originate from. Because you have to understand, there are terrorist organizations in probably dozens of countries around the world, and we only have troops on the ground in a handful of them. But we have to keep ourselves safe from all of them. And we have to just really decouple this idea that you keep yourself safe here by having combat troops on the ground in other countries, because it's just not true.
I mean, it's interesting that you make that differentiation, because, yes, the US intelligence chiefs, when they reported to Congress earlier this month, said that, according to them, ISIS still commands thousands of fighters in Iraq and Syria, as well as 8 branches, more than a dozen networks, thousands of dispersed supporters around the world. So you're absolutely right that the ideology has not been wiped out. Could one solution to try to tackle the ideology and the people behind ISIS be to seek a diplomatic solution in Syria, which the US seems to have gone off the boil with?
Well, that's a civil war that's going on there. There are so many sides of that, and the United States is actually not part of that. So we can certainly encourage them to find a diplomatic solution. The Russians are trying some things. Several others, Turkey and some others, are encouraging them to do so. But that's beyond the scope of the United States to do, and we cannot interject ourselves into a civil war that we're not even a part of to try to compel any forces to come to a solution. And I think that's just a bridge too far for the United States right now.
But isn't there a problem that the danger to the US on its own home territory of returning jihadists will continue unless the ideology is wiped out? And so perhaps it is still within the US's interest to try to seek a diplomatic solution in Syria.
Well, certainly, of course, we should always be working towards diplomatic solution. But when you have a terrorist organization that's bent on your destruction or on attacking you, there's not a lot of negotiating that can be done there, because they don't actually desire to negotiate. And that's a requirement for you to reach a diplomatic solution. But we've seen in Afghanistan probably the most dramatic picture that you can see, that it doesn't matter how many decades you keep combat troops on the ground, you can never kill enough of the bad guys to get them to go away. And the longer that you keep killing them on the ground in their country, the more they're going to fight against you. So what we have to do is to withdraw the combat troops out of there, and then worry about keeping ourselves safe and our allies safe from any threats which may arise from there or anywhere else. And we do that with our global intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance effort in close cooperation with our friendly allied intelligence services.